Hello and welcome. Are you a student eager to understand how organizations keep track of their technology? Or a seasoned IT professional looking to sharpen your asset management strategy? So let's take some moment to talk about something that keeps every organization running smoothly, and that's your IT infrastructure asset management, or simply ITAM. What is ITAM? Imagine your workplace is full of computers, software, servers, cloud tools, mobile devices, and sensitive data. Now imagine trying to keep track of all of it, knowing what you have, where it is, who's using it, whether it is secure, and when it needs to be replaced. Hence, today we are diving into the world of IT infrastructure asset management space, or ITAM. It's a vital process that helps company track, control and protect its IT assets and the sensitive data. That's what IT asset management helps with. It's like having a smart inventory system that doesn't just list the item, it manages their full life cycle from the moment you buy them to the day you retire or recycle them. With Item, you discover and record all your devices and systems automatically. You make sure your software is legal and up to date. You know which cloud resources are being used and which one are wasting your money. It also helps protect mobile and remote devices and most importantly, keep your data secure and compliant with laws. Item helps reduces surprises like unauthorized devices, expired licenses, or data leaks. This is done by giving you full control and visibility. In short, ITAM helps you run your IT like a well organized shop, clean, cost effective, and secure. It's not just about tracking equipment, it's about building trust in your system, improving your efficiency, and making smarter decisions every day. We'll break it all down in this video from how assets are discovered, categorized, monitored, to the tools and the best practices that make all work. Whether you are managing a small office or a global data center, ITAM helps you stay compliant, avoid surprises, save money, and keep your system secure and efficient. This video will walk you through the key components, common challenges, emerging trends, and practical tips every student or an IT admin or a GRC expert should know. So grab your notepad, get comfortable. Let's explore how IT asset management is shaping the future of operation. Remember, you can't protect what you don't know you have. Item is there to make sure you know about it. So hit play and let's get started. This is your host Savit Vittal Salian. Namaskar. As part of this video series, we would be covering topics as shown, starting off with objectives, importance, components of IT asset management, stages of IT infrastructure asset management, process workflow, best practices, challenges, technologies enabling ITAM, GRC considerations, emerging trends in this space, key attributes, discovery, automation, and others. Information technology, infrastructure, asset management plays a pivotal role in ensuring that technology resources are effectively managed, utilized, and optimized. In today's fast paced digital world, organizations increasingly rely on IT assets ranging from servers and storage devices to software and network equipments to maintaining operational efficiency and competitive advantage. A robust item process not only tracks the life cycle of assets but also helps reduce cost, mitigate risk, and support strategic decision making. This video explores the IT infrastructure asset management process in its depth, highlighting its importance, key components, stages, best practices, challenges, and emerging trends. IT infrastructure asset management is the process of identifying, tracking, managing, and optimizing the life cycle of IT assets to maximize value, ensure compliance, and support operational goals. As a snapshot of what's that we are going to cover, what you will have is understanding the objective, its subcomponents, the importance, its subcomponents. There are five top components of IT asset management, stages of IT infrastructure asset management, process workflow, best practices, challenges in IT infrastructure asset management. The subtopics are as shown in the screen. You can pause this video and can take a snapshot. This is the second section, which includes technology. Then we'll go to GRC, then emerging trends, key attributes, discovery automation, and others. I would request you to pause the screen, take a screenshot. That should help you with your notes. Let's start with the objectives. The ITAM is the process of keeping track of all the technology, equipment, and system an organization owns, such as computers, servers, softwares, network devices, cloud services, and mobile phones. It helps the organization to know what assets they have, where they are located, who is using them, what conditions they are in, whether they are secure and up to date, how much they cost, and when they need to be replaced. You think through about these 6 bullet points. These are the basics. Now, if you are in an audit or going for a risk assessment, if you are a risk manager who wants to do a risk assessment of your infrastructure, or if you are an auditor who wants to review if things are in place, these are the 6 questions at the start that you should look at and check out the team owning the service or owning the infra. Are they aware of this 6? That's a good starting point, and from there on, every time there is a yes, I know, we have to look at where's the evidence of it. What are the supporting evidences? We trust them, but we have to verify with hard evidence because that's what matters. From the objectives subcomponent perspective, what it means is how do we optimize the utilization of the assets that are under the scope? How do we ensure compliance with legal and regulatory standards? How do we manage the risk associated with these assets? How do you control the cost and budgeting? And how do we enhance the service delivery? So, while you are looking at the objective, you start with the 6, then you add the 5 in your combination of investigation on review to see how your objective stands the scrutiny. So, why is ITAM important? Imagine managing your house without knowing how many devices you own, which one are working, which one needs repair, or how much electricity they use. That would lead to understanding your waste, the confusion, and the risk. In the same way, ITAM makes sure a business avoids buying things they already have, stay compliant with laws, fix problems faster, keep costs under control, protects data and systems from risk. So, from an importance perspective, it improves visibility and control over your IT assets. It reduces operational and capital expenses. It helps in being proactive in your risk management. It helps with compliance with audits and regulatory requirements. And overall, it aligns itself to the organization's goal. Let's look at the components of IT asset management. Think of IT asset management like managing everything you own in your digital office. That's the computer, apps, cloud accounts, phones, etc. So if you pick up the hardware asset management, what is it? It's keeping track of physical devices like laptop, desktops, servers, printers, routers, etc. Why it is important? It helps to know what equipments you have, where it is, who is using it, and whether it needs repair, replacement, or disposal. The second is the software part. It's about managing all software programs and licenses. Example, from Microsoft Office, antivirus, design tools, and anything which is categorized as a software. This helps to make sure you are using legal softwares and or not paying for unused apps, and also staying protected with updated versions. The next is from a network space. It's about tracking things that are connected to your system like the routers, the switches, the firewalls, and their settings. It helps you to keep your network safe, fast, up to date, and also helps us to spot problems quickly. From a cloud perspective, it's about managing services and resources that live in the cloud, like storage, virtual machines, SaaS tools, example AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, Office 365. It helps to avoid wasting money on unused cloud services and to keep cloud data secure and well organized. From a mobile device management perspective, it's about tracking your mobile devices like smartphones, tablets, laptops, especially when people work remotely or use their own devices. Why it is important? Of course, it's to protect companies' data on the mobile device and locate or wipe data if a device is lost or stolen. From a data asset management perspective, it's about organizing and controlling the data like customer record, financial files, reports, and personal information wherever it is stored. It helps to protect sensitive information, meet privacy law, and ensure only the right people have the access. In summary, ITAM helps an organization know, control, and protect all its tech tools and data, whether they are on desk, in the cloud, or in someone's pocket. So, from a component perspective, we have hardware, software, network, cloud, mobile, and the data in itself. Let's now dive deeper into the attributes of an hardware assets. Now you can take this as a reference. You can check it against your own assets and its attributes. Check out the relevance first. And if you think there are attributes which can get added, by all means see the options that you have with the tool that you manage, and then you can add these. This enriches your database. So let's go through it one at a time. The first is the asset ID or the tag number. This is a unique identifier. How do you identify an asset? Now, example in this case, you can have a naming convention. Every organization need to define how you will name the assets. If it is an MNC with locations spread across globally, the assets can start with identifying the country. Example, if it is India, it starts with IN, IND, that combination. Then it maps out to what type of asset it is, whether it is a server, whether it is a network asset, a router, or switches. Then you need to have a tag associated with each type of asset. So the first is the asset ID. It could be a unique ID. It has to be a unique ID so that no matter who looks at it from which angle, by looking at it, ideally it should be able to identify itself at a first glance. Second is the asset type. It's a category. Your database should be able to very clearly differentiate between two assets. Asset name, descriptive name. Now this is where you will have pretext. You can write what this asset is used for, if there is any special instruction for this asset. All of these can come into the asset name. Next is the manufacturer. It's about who manufactured, which is the company or the product made by. Model number, this comes from, is very unique to those individual asset. Serial number, even more unique, and this would be only one, and it could be one, it should be one across globally. So no two asset would have a same serial number for the same product. So unique. Specifications, which is the CPU, what's the RAM, what's the storage component. Now this could be a subcomponent. So hardware specification, you can have multiple attributes within this depending on how rich your data can be built. Normally it would be automated, and in many cases we might have to select what all specs that you want to associate this asset with. Operating systems, again an attribute. MAC address, unique. IP address. Now this is something which is critical because on this there are a lot of other dependency. Hence, need to ensure that these are filled and these are not optional. The recommendation is all of these make it as mandatory. If possible, if the rigidity is possible in your system, we should not allow a asset to go in without these or any of this information. Making as much as attributes as mandatory helps in the long run. In a short run, you might be able to bypass few of them, but it will bite at a bad time. So hence, try to see whether you can make it mandatory. Purchase date is asset when it was procured by your organization. The vendor, the supplier. Now here, the vendor and supplier, these are having two aspects. One is the organization from where you the original OEM. The second is which vendor supplied you with it. Third would be you might have a vendor who is supporting it. It's not necessarily all are same. Hence, you need to be very clear in your attributes. The OEM, the vendor who provided that equipment to you, and the vendor who is supporting you during the life cycle. So hence you need to factor these in your attributes. The PO number, the cost are something that comes from your procurement team. Hence, the workflow for asset management, getting an asset into the inventory, would require multiple players because not everyone would know all of the parameters. In a large organization, that is simply not feasible. So before a asset is considered as a complete asset, I think all parameters need to be filled in and filled by respective departments. And making things mandatory helps. The warranty details, the support contract details, the references of the contract, because these are things which will be useful during operations. And knowing the details helps when you want to call up for support. The current owner, which is primarily the team which owns it, manages it, or party to the support. All of these information helps in. The location, which is the physical location, when it was installed. Now do note, you might have procured it in Jan, but the deployment might have happened in June because of projects, because project life cycle or project might take a lot of time to go online. So it might go on for months. So procurement might happen 3-4 months before it's actually deployed. So we have to know those parts. Status, whether it's in use or under maintenance or retired. These are important critical parameters. Again, not having these bites us during real BAU. Asset life cycle, which is the stages of the asset. The end of life date, when it is supposed to retire or replace. Now, here you'll have to add one more sub attributes to it. One is end of life, second would be end of support, and there would be an extended end of life. If possible, have these three together as a sub attributes on EOL. So repeat, it is EOL, is extended support and support. Depreciation schedule. Now this is something which will come from the accounting part. Risk rating. This is derived from the role that asset is playing. Assuming it is a router which connects that branch to the cloud, and that router, if knocked off, isolates that whole branch, what would be the rating? So the criticality is important to highlight. That is because in a BAU, when a particular asset breaks in, there is generally a debate on what is the criticality, and at that point of time the BAU would not know if that equipment was supporting your core banking, if it is a switch supporting your core banking infrastructure. The impact of a failure of that equipment would be way higher than a switch which is supporting a user in a branch, in a floor, in a section. The product might be same, but the product is supporting a business which is much more sensitive. So hence this risk rating is a mutually agreed rating between the businesses and the tech team. Business takes precedence because they would know the criticality of their business and what happens if a particular equipment fails. Of course, the technical team will have to brief the business, and then come to a common understanding. Security controls. This is about the features that is or the details of the encryption, the BIOS password, the asset tracking, and so on and so forth. Compliance requirement. Now, this is something useful because if you know which are the assets, because certain regulations requires you to list out all the assets which supports that regulation, or a particular regulator might come in and say anything and everything which supports my country needs to be scoped in an audit. Now, how do you know which asset supports which country? Now, that is where this compliance requirement field comes in. Linked software assets. Now, this is primarily in case of servers. You might have softwares, multiple softwares running on it. So, that need to be recorded in this field, in this attribute. Maintenance logs are good to have, but in BAU, as the organization grows larger, a maintenance log attribute helps in a very big way because generally these are critical during a service issue or an incident. Next attribute is disposal method. This is an attribute which will be again at this point maybe many organization would consider it as good to have, but as the life cycle of the asset reaches the end state, these will become critical because knowing obsolescence would be known only when we have these field populated. This would be in combination with some other dates which are other attributes, which is the support contracts, the end of life, end of support. This would be in combination, but this is something which would be required, again maybe not during the start, but eventually we will need to populate this. The last is the audit trail, which is rarely done but super critical because many a times we would have an asset being recycled. A project is over, a branch is closed, or a business has moved to a new business. Now, the asset is still valid, it has its life still pending. There is enough years to go before it gets end of life. So we can't just dispose those. It has to be reused, it has to be efficiently being navigated. In that case, audit the field, audit trail helps. Who was the owner? From where this has come from? Now, this is also critical during your upgrades or during those times when you find a particular business said it is closing off a section and you shut down as part of your decommissioning process, and suddenly the business comes back one fine day and says, no, we need that asset and we don't know where it is. Having an audit trail at that point of time is super critical. It brings efficiency into getting things back. So think through about these attributes. Check against your own list of attributes. Check what is missing if it is. Think through whether it makes sense. If it does, then do add up. In addition to, we also have some attributes like the firmware version, BIOS configuration snapshot, power consumption metrics, energy efficient rating, environmental factors like the temperature, humidity monitoring, linked backup DRs, that means if this asset is has an alternative. In addition, we have some other attributes starting off with the firmware version, BIOS configuration snapshots, power consumption metrics, energy efficiency rating, environmental factors like the rack, temperature, humidity monitoring, linked backup and DR plan if applicable, cybersecurity posture assessment, example patch status, integrating ID for service management systems. Now, these are not good to have. In a bigger context and in a larger organization, linking all of these helps in operations. Like if an asset is failing, what is the alternative to that? Is there a backup? Is there a DR for that asset? Having these attributes already factored in is valuable during critical times. The patch example. Knowing the patch status in an inventory itself is a big boost to know your compliance. Now, this is generally a very difficult area. That's because this specific attributes are not added in your database. But ask a cybersecurity person, a support person, an operation guy how critical this is during assessment, and you will know that this attributes it should not be categorized as a good to have, but it should be a must to have. Key attributes of a software assets. While there are identical attributes from hardware and software, but let us go through it once and then compare. First one is the asset tag, which is very similar to the tag that we looked at for hardware. Unique identifier for software assets in the system. Second is the software name, the full description. Version, very important to record it so that during any upgrade or any vulnerabilities we can easily identify it. Vendor, which defines the company organization that developed the software. Licensed type, which includes categories like perpetual, subscription, OEM, trial, or open source, or any other combination that is available. You can have this as a drop down if possible. Recommended is always drop down where we know the categories. Few areas would not have that option, so free text should be available. License key activation code, unique. It could be for individual or it could be a common license for the organization. Terms and conditions. Now this is something which is not there in most of the ITAM databases. But then a reference here would help in. It could be a link which could point out to where the contracts are or the terms are. Number of licenses purchased, very important here, because this is where either you are in breach or you are wasting the investment. Breach, wherein you have X number of licenses but you are using X plus 1 or more. In such cases, during an audit, you might end up breaching and paying penalties. The second case could be you have X number of it but you are underutilizing it. That is indication of wastage. And with the software costs in certain categories at a very high number, so you might lose out those precious money that could have been utilized for some other purpose. So hence this number is critical. Expiry, self-explanatory. Purchase date, vendor contract, license cost, very similar to what we have for hardware. Maintenance and support, that is SLA details and other details which would be coming with the SLAs. Location, now this is going to be challenging. This would be associated with some other hardware where it is installed. Hence, a linkage here with your hardware assets helps big time, because certain assets might have multiple softwares running on it. So, a linkage is possible if you have this in place. Business unit owner details, compliance requirement. Now, this is something which is critical but not found in most of the implementation, but if you can, then it would be the best one, so that you know which softwares require what type of compliance to be in place. Category, whether it is production, deployment, development, security, database, middleware. Now in this case, the software category, especially the production and the non-production or the development, you might have certain unique requirements. So hence think through about this. Dependency, other software and hardware that application depends on. This is something which is key when you have a good ITAM database. Linkages, wherein this software takes inputs from or where is the output of this particular software goes into, also matters. This is linkage is critical when you want to see dependencies, and a failure in one can impact the other, or a vulnerability in one of the softwares, how it links to the other is something which can be known with you when you have this specific attributes. Media sources, that is the source from where the installation files are hosted. Patches and updates. Now this is something which requires real time, because patches do keep coming in. Hence this field, if it is updated as and when the updates or patches are done. Dependency, this is where you can link your software with other softwares that work together for that particular business. It's important that we have this dependency in place. It's important because in certain conditions, example, during a vulnerability assessment, a software might be vulnerable, but it might impact the upstream and the downstream also. Hence, having a dependency mapped out helps during critical times. So this is a field which is generally not been implemented, uh, but if it is done, it helps the big time during major issues. Okay, when we want to track out, it is also important to map, because in certain cases a particular installation might require a upgrade, but due to obsolescence we can't. But then we are not having visibility as to an obsolescence in one software, how can it impact the other, or which are the ones which have a linkage. Hence this field on dependency is critical, and if done properly it can help the full chain. The next is media source, which is generally available. Patch updates, it's linked with your vulnerability management. Having this correctly recorded helps in tracking and updating. Security and vulnerability status, this is directly linked to your security aspect. Hence it's important that vulnerabilities and patches applied are recorded here. Configuration detail, these are unique parameters specific for custom setting. So if there are certain parameters that need to be enabled or disabled, if this is a place where you can record it, because a particular software can be used maybe in 10 different combinations. A particular combination might be vulnerable, hence we might have taken a call to not install that part of it, but the software as a whole is used, only a particular section is not, so you not know the customization of that software. This is where your configuration detail customization can be recorded. Audit trail, installation date, update, license usage, etc. can be recorded here. End of life information, this is date by which the vendor support is ceases. Now again, this is very similar to what we discussed in the hardware asset part. EOL will not just have end of life, it would have end of life. There should be a sub part which is extended support, and then end of support. End of life need not indicate end of support. An end of support, it's not necessarily that there is no extended end of support. Hence, the recommendation is to add all these attributes or sub attributes under this category. Decommissioning plan, record of when you are going to uninstall this, on when you are going to use those licenses, or where you are going to have it. So this also ties to your record keeping or license management process. In addition to this, there are few advanced attributes. If it is on a cloud subscription, you can record this. API integration detail, if software is integrated with other application. User roles and permissions, or basically groups. Multi-tenant management details for cloud or SaaS solutions. Cybersecurity risk, example based on vendor risk assessment. If that particular software has a specific combination of vendor who are using it or supporting it, and vendor is at risk, hence that risk could also get captured in this record. Backup or recovery information for critical software, not necessarily critical, it could be any software or all the softwares. Data residency and privacy compliance information, important for cloud SaaS. Usage metering or consumption data, especially pay as you go model. This is something which is currently in play. So this gives you a top view as to how an attribute should be recorded when it comes to hardware and software. You can pause the screen, look at the attributes, compare it against your own, and see how many are addition that you might be interested to add in. And if you have anything more than this, then do comment in. It would help me to take a newer version of this video, and I can add that. Let's now look at attributes from the network asset perspective. Asset ID and tag number, very similar to hardware and the software assets. Device type, very similar, only the product will change. Device name and host name, very similar. Manufacturer, model number, serial, hardware specification, operating system, MAC address, IP address. These are all very similar, identical to your hardware assets. So that can be easily be mapped out and the video can be looked at. for details. The next one is the role and the function. This is where you define what this particular asset is about. So it could be a controller, a firewall, a edge router, or a core switch, or so on. Location very similar, place where it is based out. VLAN, subnet association. This is unique to the network assets. This is a place where you can define the VLAN IDs and associated details. So it becomes easier for the operation staff and any other team which would be requiring this information in their planning. Uplink and downlink details. This is very unique to the or specific to the network assets. Device these assets connect to. Logical topology mapping. Purchase date, vendor supplier, purchase order, cost. These are identical to the hardware assets. Warranty and support details, deployment date, very similar. End of life, end of support, very similar. Current status, which is whether it is active, spare, under maintenance, retired, and so on and so forth. That's your current status of the asset. Backup location, where backup configurations are stored, whether it is critical for and it is this is critical for disaster recovery and so on. In addition, we have to have a field which is security controls or details, wherein features like ACL, VPNs, encryption settings, IDS, IPS configuration. These are the information which can be added into this specific area. It can be multiple sub attributes, but it's important. This is something which is found useful during troubleshooting. Compliance requirement, very much linked. Linked services. This is something which was discussed in the software part of it. Maintenance activity, incident history. Now, maintenance activity is something which will be used every time there is an activity which has been planned to. Incident history. Now, this is something which is very unique here, but if you think through, this can be also linked to your other asset, which is the hardware asset as well as the software. If there are previous incidents, that can be recorded here. This is something which is very useful for the incident management team, the problem management team, to check out if there has been incident, what are the past histories of it. This is something which will be very useful during an RCA calls. So having an incident history recorded into the attributes helps. Audit trail, which indicates the changes which has been done to the asset. Decommissioning plans, very similar to the other two assets that we discussed. In addition, we can have SNMP details, the GPS coordinates for remote network assets or mobile base stations, the PoE capabilities, that is the power on Ethernet capabilities, environmental metrics like the temperature, humidity sensors for data center devices, redundancy features like failover settings and HA pair details, licensing information, especially for firewall load balancer requiring active subscriptions. So there would be a software aspect part of it. Patch histories, which you would record anyways, and the backup routes for critical routers and switches and firewalls. Let's now look at the cloud assets. While most of the attributes are covered in the past three, which is the hardware, the software, and the networks, there will be certain unique things in cloud assets. Do note what we have learned till now or seen till now are things which you can build on. You can use it as it is and keep on adding. Hence, it is not that what is seen here is the only one which should be used in cloud. If there are attributes which make sense for your infrastructure, do add it. The idea here is to give you a very wide base so that the information, if it is available, it's captured so that it can be used when it matters. So let's go through this list. Asset ID, it's a unique ID. Provider of the cloud services, which includes AWS, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud Platform, etc. What model you are using for services, whether you are using a software as a service or platform as a service or infrastructure as a service. We can use this attribute to map it. Asset type, what type of resources? Example, virtual machines, storage bucket, database instance, load balancers, container clusters, etc. Asset name, asset description, very similar to the other. Resource ID, that is provider specific resource ID, whether it is a AWS resource, Azure resource, and so on. Region is understood, it's where it has been based out. Subscription ID, deployment date, ownership, who owns this, configuration details, wherein we can mention the specific settings as VM size, storage size, network settings, service tiers, operating system, OS of the computer resources, Ubuntu or LTS, Windows Server, networking details, the IP address, the DNS name, etc. Access control system, the IAM roles, permissions, policies applied. So basically, the area which comes under the identity access management, all those parameters can be recorded here. We can record the encryption details here. Backup and restore recovery settings, cost center, current status, you can record here as a specific attribute. Utilization metrics, which is the CPU, memory, storage, network. This is something which is very useful in case of cloud assets. We need to have this monitored because many a times these are metered and you pay for it. Hence, you need to have a very clear view about it. Licensing information, compliance level, which is very similar to networks, the hardware and the software part of it. Resources. Then we have something which is unique, which is tag and the label, metadata assigned for easier classification, whether it is production or finance, because this is something which would also be linked to your billing. Having this tag helps. Lifecycle policy, in case of cloud asset, you might have policies on scale for scaling, auto shutdown, retention, archiving, etc. SLAs, very similar to what we discussed. OLS, what we discussed. Having this clearly articulated and documented helps. Audit change and logs, activity tracking, creation, modification, deletion, and policy change. You can have this recorded as a separate attribute. In addition to it, we can have attributes which are related to cost of optimization recommendation, whether it is requiring for right sizing, etc. Linked CI/CD pipeline for DevOps managed cloud assets. Container orchestration metadata. Resource sharing details, that is multi-region, multi-account setup. Hybrid cloud integration metadata. Third-party integration, example monitoring for security tools, etc. These are the attributes which can be added onto the cloud assets. You can use it, you can pick and choose what matters, what works for you, what makes sense. Let's now look at mobile device assets. While they have similar attributes, asset ID, device type, device name, manufacturer, model, serial number. The uniqueness here is the IME and the MEID number, the unique identifier. This is a field which can be used to record this specific unique number. Operating system. In addition, you can have carrier information, that is which carrier is being used, whether it is AT&T, Verizon, Airtel, Geo, and so on. Depends on the location. You would have this field populated. The specific phone number, which is very unique, the MAC address, the Wi-Fi configuration details if it is applicable, asset owner, and this is something which is very specific to an individual. The employee ID and things can be recorded here, should be. Department he belongs to, when it was provided, current status, location, when it was purchased, supplier who sold the device, purchase order, the cost. It's important here because in case of a loss, I think the two parameters which would be quickly updated is the current status, which is lost and stolen is one of the parameters which get recorded in the current status. The cost is important because if it is a recovery, then the depreciating value had to be calculated, and what number has to be recovered from the individual is taken from this, can be taken from this. Warranty information, support contract detail. Then you have something which is the one which is used, the MDM, whether it's enrolled or not, something which is used for tracking. Security setting, installed application within that mobile device, compliance status, backup status, the EOL dates, decommission plan, incident history, and audit trail. Now, incident history would be linked, wherein this is a place where you can record incident like theft, breakage, or security breaches. Something which is critical and would be linked with few other parameters like cost and status. In addition to this, additional parameters, if it is these are devices with dual SIM, those has to be recorded. VPN configuration, battery health metrics, roaming history, data residency information for privacy sensitive cases, linked accessories, and specific compliance certification if applicable. Now let's look at the data asset aspect. It has data asset ID. It is a unique identifier for the data assets in the asset management system. Name, which is a clear name describing the data sheet, whether it is customer data, sales record, and so on. Asset type, whether it is structured, that is, whether it's a database, semi-structured, or unstructured. Data source, where the data originates, whether it's from a CRM system, IoT device, external feed, etc. Who is the owner, the individual or dependent responsible for the data asset quality and security? Which business? Description, a brief description on what this data asset contains and how it is to be used. Classification, whether it is public, internal, confidential, restricted, based on your policy. What is the content, key elements, schema details, or field containing, whether it has a PII, financial data, or health data. This is a very critical field because during investigation, review, analysis, risk assessment, this is one field which will be taking the top priority. Data format, what type of data is stored here, or is it, what format is available. Volume size, data size, and record count if applicable. Storage location, where is it hosted? On-premise, cloud, hybrid, specific database, file system, etc. Hosting environment, which includes whether it is AWS, Azure, Oracle, SharePoint. What's the policy? How long this data must be retained? Now this would be linked with the overall policy, whether it is country or whether it is group. So that will take precedence, and that's what has to be recorded in this. Backup and recovery details, which is the schedule of the backup, backup location, and a recovery point objective. Access control and permission. Who has access? Who has read? Who has write? Who has delete? And how it can be accessed? What is IAM policy being used? Encryption details. Encryption at rest, encryption in transit can be recorded in this attribute. Compliance requirement, very similar to your hardware and the software part of it. Data quality metrics will define the accuracy, completeness, consistency, timeline measures. Optional, but it is important for governance. Lineage and provenance, where it started, where it was originated, how it has moved, where it has moved. The complete flow history has to be recorded here, and this is something which would be required during forensic audit. One of the application of this lineage. Hence, recommended to have this as a mandatory field. In fact, all of, if possible, make it mandatory. It has its overheads, but it helps during critical time. Associated systems, how are they linked? Application API, service that consumes, interacts upstream and downstreams. Integration details, any extraction, transformation, transform, loading process, APIs or data pipeline linked. Version information, if version control is applied, especially during the data sheet, evolving data sheet. Usage metrics, who is using the data, what is the frequency, when it is accessed. Now this is something which would be required in cybersecurity or forensic audit or any other investigation. So having this in place helps. Current status, whether it is active, archived, depreciated, or any state that you have in your system. Data deletion, secure data destruction plan for end of life handling. Audit logs, record of access, change, transfer involving the data assets. Risk assessment rating, assess the data risk, low, medium, high, or as per your company policy, based on the sensitivity and criticality. The optional attributes include data ownership level, business owner versus technical owner distinction, data sovereignty, which is jurisdiction and location related regulatory consideration, data tokenization or masking details, anonymization status, Cloud data storage tiers, whether it is standard, infrequent access, glacier, etc. Data residency compliance, where specific storage regions is mandatory by law. Linked data dictionaries and data archival plans. Look at it, review it, compare it with your policy, check out what is the relevance, and if it is relevant, do not stop. Please add it. It helps you in the long run. Let's look at stage of IT infrastructure asset management. Think of managing IT assets like managing a life cycle. Just like how a product is born, used, maintained, and finally retired, here are the main stages in the life of IT asset management. Planning. What happens here? The organization decides what assets are needed, set goals, and create rules to manage them properly. Example, deciding how many laptops to buy this year, who will use them, and what security rules to follow. That's planning. Under acquisition, it is assets are purchased or leased through approved vendors and contracts. Example, buying a new laptop, buying software licenses, or cloud services based on the plan. The third is deployment. The asset is set up, installed, and assigned to users or departments. Example, IT configures the laptop with software and gives it to an employee. Maintenance. In this, the asset is monitored, updated, repaired, and supported throughout its use. Example, installing security patches, fixing the hardware, or renewing support contracts. That's maintenance. Under upgrade and replacements, old or outdated assets are replaced or upgraded with newer ones. Example, replacing a 5-year-old server with a new high performance one. Under disposal, the asset is retired, wiped clean of data, and disposed of or recycled responsibly. Example, securely deleting data from old laptop before recycling it. Let's now look at the flow management, how the IT asset management process flows. The ITAM workflow is the step-by-step process that helps organization track and manage all their technology assets from the moment they are discovered until they are retired. Under asset discovery and inventory, the system automatically finds and records all IT assets like computers, servers, softwares, and cloud services, or they are added manually. Generally, it is automatic. It's a more practical way of doing it. Again, in this, how it is discovered, it includes technology used like SNMP. They use something called as MIB. We'll have a separate video on that stream of work. It's a specialized area. So we'll have a dedicated video on SNMP and MIBs later. The second part is asset classification and tagging. Each asset is labeled and categorized based on the type, that is hardware, software, etc., or used like critical or non-critical, and location. This comes under the asset classification and tagging. Example or why it matters. It helps organize the asset and prioritize what needs the most attention or protection. That's asset classification and tagging. Under asset tracking, the system keeps track of where the asset is, who is using it, and what's its status or use, whether it is storage, under repair, or so on. Why it matters? It helps to avoid loss, theft, or duplication and ensures accountability and support becomes easier. Under change management, whenever asset is moved, upgraded, repaired, or changed, the update is recorded and linked to IT service records. It helps to ensure that changes are controlled and do not disrupt the system or violate policies. Next is lifecycle management. Under lifecycle management, the system tracks the entire life of the asset from purchase, use, maintenance to retirement and disposal. It helps to improve budgeting, prevents old and unsupported asset from becoming a risk, and supports timely upgrades. That's lifecycle management. Under reporting and analytics, helps generate dashboards and reports to show asset usage, cost, compliance status, and more. Why it matters? It helps in making smart decisions, planning upgrades, managing cost, and passing the required audits. Let's look at some of the best practices in IT asset management. Well, these are smart habits and helpful rules organizations should follow to keep their IT assets organized, secure, helps being cost effective and audit ready. The first is creating clear rules and policies. It means it's write down the rules for buying, how you will buy it, why you will buy it, where it will be used, how it would be maintained, and how you would retire an asset. That's creating rules and policies. This helps to ensure that everyone knows what to do, avoid confusion, and ensure assets are managed the right way. This is one of the important critical reasons for having clear rules and policies in place. Second is keeping an up to date CMDB. It's about maintaining a central list of all its assets with the details. We discussed the details under the attributes section. Why it helps? It helps so that you know what you have, where it is, and who is using it. Next is using automation tools. It's about let smart software tools automatically discover, track, and report on your assets. It saves time, reduces human error, and keeps information accurate in real time. The next is follow recognized standards. Means use global frameworks such as ITIL or ISO to guide your asset management process. It helps ensure professionalism, helps in compliance, and aligns with the global best practices. Next is to conduct regular audits. Periodic checks, that's what your record should match with. What's physical, what's virtual. Hence, an audit helps in that. It helps catch missing or incorrect entries, keeps your inventory clean, and you can build trust. Next is to control who can access or change the record. The intention is to allow only authorized people to update or edit asset information. This helps to prevent mistake, accidental deletion, or unauthorized change. The next is track the entire asset lifecycle. What it means is manage every step from purchase, use, maintenance to disposal for each asset. It helps improve planning, it helps with budgeting, it reduces waste or risk from outdated equipment. The next is to tag and classify. What it means is label your asset properly and group them with types, location, owner, or criticality, or combination that works for you in your organization. The idea is to make finding assets easier, help to sort, and help to prioritize. That's the objective of tagging and classifying the assets. The next is the critical one of training the staff on asset management. You have to ensure that the employee understands the importance of asset tracking and follow the policies. It helps build a culture of responsibility and reduce accidental risk. The last part in this is linking your asset to your security and compliance. Means to connect your ITAM with cybersecurity and compliance team to protect data and meet legal requirements. It helps ensure assets do not become security blind spots or lead to fine. So, taking a pause here, we have covered the objectives, the importance, the components, and stages of IT infrastructure asset management. We have covered the process workflow and the best practices. So, we will pause here as part 1. In part 2, we will cover the challenges, technologies, governance, GRC, trends, attributes. While we covered certain attributes, we will go through some summary, then automation. So that's for part 2. Thank you very much for the time that you have invested in this till now. Much appreciated. We will cover the part 2, it's more exciting. See you in part 2. Thank you. Namaskar.